Like from the day I got hurt, my $1 million salary got cut. Every week it got cut in half and got cut in half and got cut in half and kept getting cut in half till there was nothing left.
That was Bret the Hitman Hart, the man who called himself the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. 5-time world champion, technical master, wrestling royalty. But retirement didn't bring peace. It brought a series of tragedies that shattered everything he had built. So what really went down with the icon? Let's break it down. The kick that stole everything. There's a moment in every warrior's life when the battle they've been fighting suddenly turns against them. For Bret, the Hitman Hart, that moment came not in a blaze of glory, not in some legendary farewell match where the crowd rose to their feet and chanted his name into the rafters of wrestling immortality. No, for the man who called himself the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be, that moment came in the form of a single, reckless kick to the head that would rob him of everything he had spent over 2 decades building. It was December 19th, 1999, at WCW Starrcade, and Bret Hart was facing Bill Goldberg in what should have been just another match in his storied career. But during the contest, Goldberg delivered a mule kick that connected with devastating precision to Hart's skull. The impact was immediate. Hart saw stars, his vision blurred, his world tilted on its axis. But like the consummate professional he had always been, Hart continued wrestling for weeks afterward, unknowingly exacerbating the damage with every match, every bump, every moment he spent in that ring. What Hart didn't know, what he couldn't have known in those agonizing weeks that followed, was that his career was already over. The concussion he sustained that night would develop into post-concussion syndrome, characterized by relentless headaches, memory issues, and a cognitive fog that refused to lift. By October 26, 2000, the official announcement came. Bret Hart was retiring from professional wrestling at just 43 years old.
And then, like when Bill Goldberg kicked me in the head and ended my career, it was such a lousy way to go because I didn't know my career was over. And when I did go home, and it took me a year to find out that my career was over.
And if the loss of his career wasn't devastating enough, the financial betrayal that followed would leave an even deeper wound.
And right around the time I found out that I couldn't, my doctors told me that I could never wrestle again. Then the WCW fired me, and like from the day I got hurt, my $1 million salary got cut. Every week it got cut in half and got cut in half and got cut in half and kept getting cut in half till there was nothing left.
Imagine that for a moment. You've given your body, your youth, your very being to an industry that you helped revolutionize. And in return, when you need them most, when you're lying broken and uncertain about your future, they systematically strip away every penny until you're left with nothing but your injuries and your memories. But fate, it seemed, wasn't finished with Bret Hart, not by a long shot. Just 2 years into what should have been a peaceful, if unwanted, retirement on June 24th, 2002, Bret suffered a massive stroke while riding his bicycle in Calgary. He wasn't wearing a helmet when he hit a pothole, flew over the handlebars, and landed on the back of his head. The trauma, compounded by his prior concussion history, triggered a catastrophic event that left him with total left-side paralysis. Hart would later describe the sensation as if his body had been cut in half with a saw, with his left side completely dead. He couldn't lift a finger, couldn't blink his eye, couldn't move his limbs. The man who had once executed the sharpshooter with perfect precision, who had carried championships on his shoulders across continents, was now confined to a wheelchair, unable to perform the most basic human functions.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah? You feeling good?
Feeling good.
What have you been doing to recover from the stroke?
Oh, living life, that's all. I mean, I had a stroke. It's been quite a few years now.
For 3 months, Bret Hart lived in that wheelchair, hospitalized at Foothills Hospital in Calgary, with doctors offering no guaranteed recovery plan. They couldn't tell him when or if he would ever walk again. The uncertainty was perhaps more terrifying than the paralysis itself.
Because those early days when you have a stroke are so daunting and dark, and your recovery is so, there's no promises, and you just got to slowly work your way through it. And I remember those days really well. I never forget them.
In those dark days, when hope seemed like a distant memory, Walter Gretzky, father of hockey legend Wayne Gretzky and himself a stroke survivor, reached out to Bret with words that would echo in his mind throughout his recovery.
Walter Gretzky was a guy that called me up when I suffered my stroke, and he gave me a big pep talk about don't despair and don't give up, and take every day one day at a time. But you know, those words, I remember at the time I was so despondent and so fearful of what I was gonna end up with at the end. I was still in a I was in a wheelchair for 3 months. And I did slowly start to recover, but I remember his words echoing in my head all the time. Don't despair, don't give up, don't give up.
The physical therapy was brutal. Hart would equate the simple act of trying to pick up a toothpick with his damaged left hand to attempting to lift a 5,000-pound car. An hour of physio would leave him so exhausted that he'd sleep for 6 hours afterward.
When you're first doing those kind of things, it all seems so hopeless. Like, are you kidding me? I can't pick up a toothpick with my left hand, and it's so draining, and those days when you did an hour of physio was like, like when you finish doing it, you go back to your room and sleep for 6 hours because you're so tired. It was the same. I would equate trying to pick up a toothpick would be the same as trying to pick up a 5,000-pound car or something and try to tip it over.
But Bret Hart didn't become a legend by giving up. By May 2003, less than a year after his stroke, he made a public appearance at a WWA event in New Zealand, walking unaided. He had willed himself back from the brink, though the victory came with permanent reminders, lingering weakness on his left side, emotional imbalances that would cause random crying spells, and facial muscle issues that affected his smile. Hart has called his stroke recovery his greatest achievement and most challenging battle, surpassing any wrestling feat he ever accomplished. And yet, the universe wasn't done testing him. In 2013, routine PSA testing revealed elevated levels that led to a biopsy confirming early-stage prostate cancer. Initially managed with active surveillance, the situation worsened, and in February 2016, Bret underwent a robotic prostatectomy performed by Dr. Eric Hindman in Calgary.
When you first heard the word cancer, how did that feel to you?
Well, I think just for anybody, it's the same thing. It's a terrifying word. I was terrified of what that meant, and had to take a good long look at it and figure out where I stood.
By 2017, Bret was declared cancer-free, but the battle had taken its emotional toll. What made it even more poignant was that his brother Smith was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer that same year. Smith would pass away in 2017 at age 68 from the same disease Bret had just conquered. And then, in January 2020, Bret revealed yet another cancer diagnosis: basal cell carcinoma on his shoulder, the most common form of skin cancer. Fortunately, it was caught early and removed surgically, but it added yet another chapter to a medical history that reads more like a horror novel than a retirement story. But if Bret Hart's personal health battles weren't heartbreaking enough, the tragedies that befell his family would break even the strongest of spirits. A family torn apart. The Hart family, often called wrestling's first dynasty, has endured disproportionate grief, with multiple sibling deaths fueling narratives of a family curse tied to wrestling's dangers. It began with Dean Hart, who died in 1990 at just 36 years old from Bright's disease, a kidney ailment compounded by flesh-eating bacteria. Dean's passing was the first crack in the foundation, a harbinger of the heartbreak to come, but nothing could have prepared Bret or the world for what happened on May 23, 1999. Owen Hart, Bret's youngest brother and closest confidant in the business, was performing at WWE's Over the Edge pay-per-view when a harness malfunction caused him to fall 78 feet to his death. The internal bleeding was fatal. Owen was just 34 years old, leaving behind his wife Martha and their 2 children, OJ and Athena.
Bret Hart is a wrestler. His brother Owen Hart recently died in a horrible accident during a WWF event. One of these flying stunts. Is that just something that's sort of one of those fluke things where, I don't know, just everything goes wrong that night? Who the hell knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
For Bret, losing Owen wasn't just losing a brother, it was losing his best friend, his tag team partner, the person who understood him better than almost anyone else in the world.
Yeah, he was, I can't think of a better guy. He was such a great guy on the road. He was, and he was a great family guy.
Right.
And he had an unbelievable sense of humor. He was so funny to be around all the time. So he was never one of those kind of guys that you didn't you didn't look forward to having him around. You always liked being around. He was the best practical joker I ever met. I mean, he was just such a funny guy all the time.
Owen's death sparked a lawsuit against WWE, settled in 2000, but it tore the Hart family apart in ways that wounds never fully healed. Some siblings supported the lawsuit, others felt it alienated them from the wrestling world that had been their entire lives. The losses continued to mount. Stu Hart, the family patriarch who had founded Stampede Wrestling in 1948 and trained legends in his infamous dungeon, champion, passed away in 2003 at 88. Stu's wife Helen, the nurturing matriarch who had written a family memoir called Under the Mat, had preceded him in death in 2001 at age 77. The couple who had raised 12 children and built a wrestling empire were both gone within 2 years of each other, leaving their children to navigate a world suddenly without the pillars that had held everything together. Smith Hart, the eldest brother, died in 2017 at 68 from prostate cancer. Extended family losses compounded the grief. Jim Neidhart, married to Bret's sister Ellie, died in 2018 from a fall. Davey Boy Smith, married to Bret's sister Diana, had passed away back in 2002 from heart failure. Through all of this, Bret has spoken openly about survivor's guilt, noting in 2025 interviews how these losses deepened his appreciation for remaining family while also contributing to his emotional candor. And then there was the matter that had haunted him since November 9th, 1997, the Montreal screwjob. For those unfamiliar with one of wrestling's most infamous incidents, Bret was WWF champion and set to face Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series before departing for WCW. Unbeknownst to Bret, Vince McMahon orchestrated a secret plan where referee Earl Hebner rang the bell prematurely during Michaels' sharpshooter submission hold, awarding the title to Michaels without Bret's submission or knowledge.
The whole screw job is based on a single conversation between me and Shawn, maybe a month before the screw job, where I stopped him and said to him in San Jose, I said, we're wrestling each other at Survivor Series in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or something. And he said, yeah, I just found out today. And I said, I just want you to know, I have no problem doing anything you want. I said, I know we've had our issues. I said, but if I got to drop the belt to you, I have no problem with that. And I want you to know that if you're ever in the ring with me, you're always safe. I'm a total professional. I would never take, if I've got some kind of issue with you, I'll talk to you in the dressing room or something, but I'll never take those things to the ring. That's the time when you have to be professional. And I remember I said that to him, and I remember Shawn looked at me. This is where it all came from, is he looked at me and said, well, I appreciate that, but I just want you to know that I'm not willing to do the same thing for you. And when he said that, it was like, I just promised this guy, I just said I'd drop the belt to you, so you tell me to stick it up my ass kind of thing, and it's like, that's where all the problem was.
Right. For years, Bret carried that betrayal like a physical weight.
And I realized that when I had my stroke, I think that there was a part of me that realized that it doesn't do you any good. Like, if I was going to give advice to everybody out there, it's like, when you suffer something really huge happens in your life in a negative way, and you hate somebody and you're so angry about it. I carried it around. I was liking it to carrying a big bag of rocks around. It was like every day I had to pick up this bag of rocks about how I'm mad at Vince McMahon and the screw job. And, you lug it around every day, and then, of course, I had the stroke.
It took nearly dying to teach Bret that hatred was only destroying himself.
And so it's like, I realized after I had my stroke, after about a year, how lucky I was that I got the recovery that I did have. And I learned the hard way that it doesn't do any good to carry around a lot of grief and heartache in your...
Bret's personal life reflected the turbulence of his career. His first marriage to Julie Smadu lasted from 1982 to 2002, spanning his wrestling prime and producing 4 children, but ended due to the strains of fame and constant travel. A second marriage to Italian Cinzia Rota was brief, lasting only from 2004 to 2007. But in 2010, Bret found lasting love with Stephanie Washington, despite initial family skepticism over their 26-year age gap. Stephanie has been by his side through every health battle since, and in 2025, Bret describes her as his rock, celebrating anniversaries publicly and crediting her for his happiness. His 4 children, Jade, Dallas, Alexandra, and Blade, have largely avoided the wrestling ring at their father's encouragement, instead pursuing education and independent careers. In 2024-2025, his daughter Jade battled and beat breast cancer, with Bret vocal about her strength and courage. After years of bitterness, health battles, and family tragedy, Bret Hart faced a choice that would define the final chapter of his life: continue carrying the bag of rocks, or finally set it down and walk towards something better. The excellence of redemption. In 2010, Bret returned to Monday Night Raw after 12 years away, confronting Shawn Michaels in a tense segment that ended in a handshake symbolizing forgiveness.
I mean, thank God that you were able to just tie a bow on it by coming back to WWE, doing the WrestleMania thing, doing the thing with, like, just that there's some kind of, at least some closure.
Yeah,
to it.
when I think about Sean, and I've said this a few times, but with, after, like when I came back and did that storyline with Sean, it was something when I remember, it's like, I'll make a truce with Sean. We'll make peace. We can do it right in the ring. I'll just say,
Yeah.
Sean and I made a peace that was very real, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I dug deep into my own sort of soul and said, I'll make peace with this guy, even though I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. And I can only say to people in life, in their own lives, if you got something that's really eating away at you and kind of destroying you, dig it up and open it up and get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Make peace with it and say goodbye. Like, don't keep dragging around a lot of pain. And that's what I learned from that whole thing with Sean. And that was a good lesson to learn.
That same year, Bret faced Vince McMahon at WrestleMania Dixie 6 in a no-holds-barred match, winning symbolically with the sharpshooter amid interference from the Hart family. He even won the United States Championship at 53 years old, proving that the Hitman could still compete when called upon. Since his stroke, Bret has served as a spokesperson for March of Dimes Canada's stroke recovery program, using his platform to give hope to others facing similar battles.
So now you're the spokesperson for March of Dimes. What does that role entail? What are you doing?
Just, being a voice of, hope and giving people confidence that things will get better. When you have a stroke, there's so many people involved in that whole process of sort of rebuilding you and giving you that confidence back. And, I was blessed with a good recovery. And so now I try to do the same thing. There's a lot of people that are all involved in sort of helping you kind of get to where they can get you, because there is no promises.
His cancer journey similarly transformed him into an advocate. Bret now promotes early detection through PSA testing for men over 40, partnering with the Calgary Prostate Cancer Center for events.
I'm kind of more of having coming forward. I think I'm more of an advocate to say, don't be afraid of coming forward. And certainly don't be afraid of getting checked, because you need to know, the sooner you know, the better your chance you have of having a really good recovery. And early testing is the key to probably all cancer, but especially with prostate cancer. And coming forward for me was, I wanted to set an example, I think, to men around the world that don't be afraid of prostate cancer. Face it head on and set an example for everyone else by coming forward rather than shying away from that responsibility to win your toughest battles.
In 2018, Bret received one of his most meaningful honors. He was named Courageous Chief Ini Yita by Siksika Nation elder Clarence Wolfleg, recognizing his advocacy and the family's historical kinship with indigenous communities. Bret has said this honor tops Hitman, using it to promote cultural respect. In July 2025, Bret teamed up with Amazon to deliver over 100 essential items to the Children's Cottage Society in Calgary, personally unloading boxes and interacting with recipients. But perhaps the crowning achievement came in April 2025. At 68 years old, Bret Hart became the first three-time WWE Hall of Famer, inducted for the inaugural Immortal Moment category, honoring his legendary WrestleMania 13 submission match against Stone Cold Steve Austin. Today, Bret runs Hitman's Bar in Calgary, opened in 2023, showcasing his memorabilia, including his 1992 WWF Championship belt. He co-hosts the Sharpshooter Show podcast with his sons Dallas and Blade, and promotes ventures like limited edition Bret Hart Dark Rum. But Bret wouldn't be Bret without some controversy. In November 2025, he alleged in an interview that Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon were lovers, a claim Jim Ross dismissed as bullshit. He also expressed frustration at being snubbed at SummerSlam 2025, where WWE invited him but allegedly had no seat available. And Goldberg, even after all these years, the wound hasn't fully healed.
How do you feel 25 plus years later, Bret Hart still has this animosity, it feels like?
I really don't care anymore about Bret. I could care less. You know Louis, right?
Uh-huh.
All I can tell you is this. you, Louis and I know, and Knobs knows, through Legends of Wrestling, that shortly thereafter, all that shit that happened, I talked Louis into giving Bret Hart a job at Legends of Wrestling. he must forget about stuff like that. Hey, man, I'm 57 years old. I don't need to prove anything to Bret Hart or to any other human being. You know, the fact is, it was a mistake. I was extremely green in the business, and anybody who knows me knows that if I didn't intend to hurt him, then it was an accident. You know, if I intended to hurt him, then I'd be the first one to tell him.
Sure.
And you and everyone else. But man, I was green, dude. I mean, it was a screw up in the match, and it's live on national television.
Yeah.
And there's two people that have to dance, and you can only do so much.
Critics like Eric Bischoff have suggested that Bret's ongoing criticisms stem from bitterness rather than principle. But supporters argue his candor is simply the natural result of a man who has endured more than most could bear and refuses to pretend otherwise. Jim Ross has reported that despite everything, Bret is currently healthy as a horse. With an estimated net worth of $7 million, his wife Stephanie by his side, and his legacy cemented across 3 Hall of Fame inductions, Bret Hart has found something approaching peace. Has his life since retirement been heartbreaking? Absolutely. Strokes, cancer, the loss of brothers and parents, betrayals that cut to the bone. But it's also been a story of resilience, redemption, and the stubborn refusal to stay down when life delivers its hardest blows.
You're a wrestler and a fighter.
Yeah.
Bret Hart, thanks so much, and we're glad to see you doing well. Glad you could be with us this morning.
The best there is, the best there was, and through every heartbreak, still standing as the best there ever will be. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.